And this morning we are sharing on the topic, shining the light of the gospel. Shining the light of the gospel, as we think about the big theme of Brighter Together. So shining the light of the gospel, and we are finding that from the passage at hand that has been clearly read to us by Pastor Rachel. In life, we always have friends. And some friends or some friendships develop in strange ways that you even cannot explain. Our little boy, who is now 7 years old, when he was 3 years, developed some strange friendship with our security guard. And the security guard was close to 60 years. And he became a very close friend to our little boy who was 3 years. And strangely, the boy would stay with him sometimes up to late at night. We bring him home, he disappears. And he always loved when he saw his friend, the security guard, opening the gate and closing it. That was just out of this world for him. And we tried to understand what is happening between this little boy and the security guard. We thought maybe there are some goodies that the security guard is giving the boy, and the boy is so much attracted to the friend. But there was nothing. And their friendship came to an end when the security guard was sent to another place, was relocated. In the passage at hand, we find a story of a man, and this man is a man with a very difficult name. In fact, the name is a tongue twister in itself. You are told to pronounce Mephibosheth twice, you will say your own things. The man is named Mephibosheth. And this is one of the many difficult names that we have in the Bible. We have other names that are difficult. And interestingly, we don't find people naming their children with names like this. I don't know what has happened. People seem to be watching a lot of Mexican soaps and naming their children after some characters. But this one was named Mephibosheth. But there was another character that had a difficult name, like Nebuchadnezzar. I've never heard of a child named Nebuchadnezzar. Or Sennacherib. That was also another difficult name. And there is another one called Abel Beth Maacah. Very difficult name. And one that is even more difficult than them all is found in Isaiah chapter 8, verse 1 and verse 3. He was named Maher Shalal Hashbaz. And that is still one name. Very difficult names. His name, the name of Mephibosheth means from the mouth of shameful thing. Quite interesting. In the passage at hand, we find a story of David, and David showing kindness to his brother and friend and brother Jonathan. And it is of interest that the relationship between David and Jonathan was a strange one. Saul, who was the father to Jonathan, was the king of Israel. In fact, the first king of Israel. He loved the Lord and walked in his ways, but down the road he lost direction, lost the compass, and became another story for another day. But he also had a son who was named Jonathan. And Jonathan became a friend to David. At this point, David was a soldier, a leader in King Saul's army. And being a soldier in King Saul's army, there was something else also about David and Saul that was that's of interest to note. That David married Saul's daughter, who was named Michal. And that is recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 17 to 30. So David knew Saul both as the commander-in-chief, but also as father-in-law. But he also knew him as the father to his close friend named Jonathan. Strange enough, Saul who was the father-in-law to David and a commander-in-chief, hated David so much. And every time the discussion that came up about David, Saul's response to that discussion or to that conversation was clear that there was deep hatred. And this bothered so much Jonathan, who was the son to Saul and a friend to David, that out of this conversation at home, it became clear to Jonathan that if King Saul has an opportunity, gets an opportunity, he would kill David. And that was so painful to him. And he told David, your life is at risk. And he spoke to him so straight. You know, there are moments, there are those friends that will tell you things as they are, without sugarcoating. I think Jonathan told David, without mincing his words, that if my dad finds you in a dark corner, that's the end of you. Don't even think that you can find yourself in that situation. You will be gone. And that cemented their friendship so much that they even swore on oath before God that they will keep their friendship, whether dead or alive. And in 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 15, David vowed that he would not cut off kindness in the house of Jonathan forever. And strange enough, Jonathan knew that there will be a time when David is going to be the leader in this nation. And he told David, when that time comes, when my father Saul is gone, and I am gone, please show kindness to my family. And David swore that he's going to do exactly that. Now a time came, both Saul and Jonathan died in a battle that was in Mount Gilboa. And both died. And now David ascends to the throne. It was history, it was, expected at the time that whenever a king takes over the throne, the descendants of the other king, especially the sons, because this was a patrilineal society, especially the sons, would all be killed so that they do not pose a threat to the new king. So Jonathan knew at one point there will be something that will happen. And if Saul is dead, of course, by law, he knew that his life will be in danger as a son. So he knew he'd be dead also. And he says, when that time comes, David, when that time comes, and my father Saul is gone, and I am gone myself, please show kindness to my family. After David ascends to power, he became powerful. On the other side, Ishbosheth took over leadership also, trying to lead in the line of his father, King Saul. But the leadership or the power, the strength was more powerful on the side of David more than Ishbosheth. And a battle ensued. In fact, it is said in history, David worked so hard to make sure that that battle never happens. He had purpose that I will not fight anyone in this family for the sake of my friend and brother Jonathan. And he worked so hard to stop that, but it never happened. And what happened next is that there was a civil war, and in the process, Ishbosheth is killed. And now David takes over the throne fully. And when he takes over the throne, things happened. Down the road, we are introduced to a young man who still survived. Surprisingly, when the war broke out, whenever there is war, people run for their dear life. You don't go for what you own. You run for your dear life. You've seen in the war that is happening in Russia right now. And you can see many people running for their dear lives. Some are driving cars, but you get into a situation where everybody is on the road, and so you cannot move. And a quick evaluation, when there is a crowd, you can become an easy target. So people would get out of the car, you pick your small bag, and you leave the car there. Know that you're going to come for it later. You leave and you say to your beautiful car, "Kwaheri kabisa." and move, because at that point, life is more important. And now, as the people are running out of this, trying to secure their lives, we are told that the nurse who was carrying or taking care of this little boy, Mephibosheth, as she was running for her life, slipped and fell. And the little boy dropped down and broke both his feet in the rocky hills of Mahanaim. And there's no time to go to the hospital to find attention. So you have to hide first, because this little boy is a descendant of the royal king. If he is found, he will be killed. So he had to hide this boy for some time. And his bones healed, and they never healed correctly. So he remained crippled for life. Many years passed by, and things happened. And King David sits on the throne. And then he remembers that there was a friend of mine named Jonathan, whom I had vowed that I will keep our friendship and I will show kindness to his family. And so this passage comes forth. David in chapter 9, verse 1, David asks, "Is there anyone left in the house of Saul whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Remember, the kindness that David is going to give to whoever will come up was not because of this person who comes up. It was for Jonathan's sake. And at this point, Jonathan is long gone. He's dead. And he inquires. And as a king, he is told, actually, there is a man who works in that family named Ziba. And he summons Ziba. And Ziba shows up. And David tells Ziba, "Is there anyone in that family who is still alive?" Of course, Ziba knows how costly at this point to tell a lie before the king. If you tell a lie, that is your last lie in life. So he says, yes, there's someone. And this one is crippled. He's actually in Lodebar, and is being housed by somebody named Makir. And he's told, go get him. Mephibosheth at this point was living in hiding, taking care of his life and waiting. Of course, in his heart of hearts, he knew there will be a time when there will be a knock on that door, and that knock on that door will spell doom for my life. Because if he is found, he will be killed. That was the rule. And the knock came to the door, and it is Ziba. And Ziba tells him, the king wants to see you. And boom. I think Mephibosheth, as he was going, he was telling his friends, "Kwaherini kabisa, it was nice meeting you guys." He knows he's not going to come back. He knows he's going to die. And so he comes. Verse 5. So King David had him brought from Lodebar, from the house of Makir, son of Amiel. When Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay honor. And David said, "Mephibosheth, your servant," he replied. Verse 7, "Don't be afraid," David said to him, "for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan." I think when Mephibosheth showed up in the king's palace and fell down in the presence of the king, because that was the rule, and swore loyalty, that at your service, and falling down was a sign that I am loyal, completely loyal. And I think as Mephibosheth was down there, he was thinking in his heart of hearts that perhaps the king would want to tell me, "Ulidhani utatoroka mpaka siku gani?" You remember the statement, "Mkono wa serikali iko kila mahali," I think he was thinking, now he wants to tell me, "Why have you been hiding? You thought you'd never be found." He expected the king's wrath upon him. But strange enough, he receives king's commendation and welcome. David immediately receives him and gives executive orders. He says, I will restore all the land. Listen to what he says in verse 7. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table. Immediately David sees Mephibosheth, and we know his situation. He was lame. He says, I will restore all the land that belonged to your dad, your granddad. The rule at the time was, if you take over leadership, the property of the other king that you have overthrown, you take everything that belonged to him. That is yours by law. And so David was not under any obligation to return this land. By law, he was okay to have it. But when he remembers his friend and the kind of agreement he had made with his friend, that I will show kindness to your family, he says, I'm going to return all the land to the last point to you. I think when David saw Mephibosheth smile, when he saw the look in his eyes, when he saw the expression in his face, when he saw the same quality of voice and perhaps his same mannerism, he would always think about his friend. And he would say, you remember there are some times that you say, this one looks exactly like the dad, I think when he hears the sound and the voice of Mephibosheth, he would say, what? You mean Jonathan is alive again? No, kumbe it is Mephibosheth. In verse 8, Mephibosheth receives an overwhelming kindness from King David. And David had purposed, even on vow to his friend and brother Jonathan, that I will not touch your family. He even did not want Saul killed in the battle. If he had an opportunity to stop, David would have said, stop it. You remember he had on two occasions, he had an opportunity to kill Saul. But I think when he lifted his sword towards Saul, he remembers, this is not just a king. He is the dad to my friend. After killing him, what will I tell Jonathan? And he says, no, I'm not going to do it. He didn't even want to have Ishbosheth killed. He even did not want to see Abner, and Abner was one of the cousins of King Saul and was also a commander in the army. He did not want to see him dead. He wanted to protect everything. I think his advisors were telling the king, please come out, strike this man. And he remembers, who is this man? He's the father to my friend. He's a cousin. He's a member of their family. I'm not going to do that. Friends, brothers, and sisters, this morning, I want to bring to attention a number of lessons that we can learn on shining the light of Christ as we grow brighter together. 3 lessons. 1 lesson on kindness, 1 lesson is a spiritual lesson, and 1 lesson is maturity, growing up in life. A lesson on kindness. This passage reminds us to always remember the kindness of a friend. Always remember the kindness of a friend. Always remember the kindness of a friend. Verse 1 says, is there anyone still left in the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? The kindness that is going to be given here to Mephibosheth was not because of him. It was because of a friend, Jonathan. In fact, they had sworn in chapter 18 of 1 Samuel verse 1, and they had made a commitment that they will be friends for life, You hear of people calling each other BFF. This was a real friend for life. They call each other friends for life, but when situations turn, that friendship is gone. Jonathan protected David, and so David also in turn came to protect the family of Jonathan. In the passage at hand, when this young man, who is a descendant of Jonathan, shows up from the family of Makir in Lodebar, he says, I'm actually nothing but a dead dog, because he expected that he's going to be punished by the king. And the king says, no, sorry. You are part of my family. The passage at hand reminds us to always remember the kindness of a friend. And this is a crucial lesson in life that we need to embrace and always remember the kindness of a friend. Do you remember a friend who first housed you when you were new in the city and trying to find a footing in the city? When the only place you knew in the city was country bus and Afya Center. You know, there are rumors always on social media that there are guys from North Rift whom, if you paid Afya Center differently, they are lost forever. Do you remember a friend who housed you when you are first finding your footing in the city? Always remember the kindness of a friend. David remembered the kindness of Jonathan. Do you remember the friend who helped you learn the culture in your work environment when you were very new and helped you to settle down and how to navigate life in your work environment? Do you remember them? The passage at hand reminds us to always remember the kindness of a friend. When I took over the job that I currently do, serve in the university, I had a friend, two friends, whom I didn't know them, but they stood with me and helped me navigate life. One is a Catholic priest named Father Kaigwa, who made sure that in the house that I was going to occupy, the house is cleaned, and he even made sure that it had enough lights. All the lights that were broken, he replaced at his own cost. Never asked me for a shilling. And this is a stranger we were meeting for the first time. Do you think I will forget that friend? In fact, when at that time my wife was seriously expectant. You understand what I mean, seriously expectant? This is for adults only, you know? And my friend and brother, the priest, offered to drive me to Aga Khan. He told me, I will be your chauffeur. I'll drive you to Aga Khan. But to book the space for your wife, I cannot help you because I don't know that language. And so a lady by the name Lynette stepped in and moved around until she came back with a small note and told me, bed number 21, when that time comes, you make your way to Aga Khan. Do you think I'll forget those friends? You also have friends. Do you remember the kindness of a friend? Do you remember the family that helped you during your school days when you could not make ends meet and God used different people to provide for you? Do you remember them? Now that the Lord has blessed you, do you remember them? Always remember the kindness of a friend. Do you remember the promises that you silently made to God after He came through to you in a critical time? Maybe you are asking for a job. God critically, at a critical time, came through for you. Or you are asking for a spouse or any other issue in life. Do you remember? Remember kindness. David, every time he thought about his friend Jonathan, he remembers, that man was so kind to me, I will be kind to every member of his family. Even though they hated me so much, I'll be kind to them. When I was in nursery school, I remember the kindness of my nursery school teacher. She was named Madam Nora. I've tried looking for Madam Nora to this day. If you find Madam Nora, tell her that I'm looking for her. Because at a critical time in life, her kindness changed my life completely to this day. There was something that you would go and tell the teacher before you go to the washroom, you know? If you want to go out to the washroom, you would go whisper something to the teacher, and the teacher would respond, go. So I knew the answer is go. But what are you going to tell the teacher so that you are told to go? And I used to have a captula that had a rubber band here, with a small pocket behind. And this captula was everything. You pull it up, boom, that's it. There was nothing beyond that captula. If that captula is pulled down, you are the way God created you. And so as I was still figuring out what to go and tell the teacher so that I'm told to go, then that need was sorted out. And my captula graciously accommodated it. And the teacher noticed that I am in a situation, and she came and told me, "Toa a captula," and I removed, and of course I remained the way God created me. And she took it and put it outside in the sun to dry up and tied me round with a lasso. That changed me completely. I knew when I grow up, I'll be a teacher like Madam Nora. A lot has happened down the road. Every time I think about that experience, it changed me to this day. Have you seen Madam Nora? Tell her I am looking for her. Remember the kindness of a friend. People are too quick to remember the negatives, but they forget the positives that change their lives forever. My friend and brother Tarus remembers somebody who made a comment that changed his attitude towards singing. He would be singing in the hill voices now. But somebody made a comment that changed his direction. Let us learn to remember the kindness of a friend. I know you have friends. I know you have people who came through and God used them at a critical time in life. Do you remember to give thanks to them? And even mention to them, to their ears, so that it can double the goodness as they help others. Remember the kindness of a friend. Lesson number 2 is a spiritual lesson. Whatever happens in life, don't forget your position in Christ. You are a child of the King. Whatever happens in life, don't forget your position in Christ. You are a child of the King. Verse 7 says, David says to Mephibosheth, don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. Whatever happens in life, don't forget your position. You are a child of the King. Mephibosheth had gone through situations, turns of life, turns in the path of life. A lot of them. Many painful experiences. And he was a royalty. He remembers, I think he would be telling stories of how life used to be when he was living in the palace. But at this point, mambo kwa ground are totally different. He's living in hiding. In fact, his description of himself is a dead dog. At this point in life or in time, dogs were not the best friends that we have. They were not the man's best friend. Dogs were considered something that was worth loathing. Something that you not even associate with. Though some dogs were taken care of for the purpose of keeping the sheep, majority of the dogs were wild dogs. They would eat carcasses out there. In fact, they would even eat people. You remember the story of Jezebel. She was eaten by the dogs. So dogs were not that close friend that we have today. And when Mephibosheth gives a description of himself, he says, I am nothing but a dog. And not just a dog, a dead dog. It was the lowest position you can ever imagine. 1 Samuel 24:14 reminds us that. In short, Mephibosheth considered himself worthless, completely worthless, worth nothing, even less than a dog. It is said a dead dog was even, in terms of priority, was even lower than a flea, Mephibosheth considered himself completely lowly and nobody. Whatever happens in life, my friends, brothers, and sisters, do not forget your position in Christ. You are a child of the King. And David looks at him and blesses him. He remembers that this one is a royalty. He's a descendant of Jonathan. He receives him. And as he makes his way to the king's table, I think, David gives an executive order. And he gives an executive order that Mephibosheth will have all the land that belonged to Saul. And number 2, he will always be eating with me at the dinner table. I think the king told his handlers, every time you serve me dinner, on the other side of the table is Mephibosheth. I cannot eat my food without looking at him there. And I think he knew because of his condition, sometimes it's unfortunate in the society that people who have, are abled differently can be treated differently. That's so sad. David made sure that every time he eats, whatever he's eating, Mephibosheth is eating the same thing. If he is happy, he would see that Mephibosheth is okay. If he is sad, he would ask him, what is happening, young man? He would eat with him every day on the dinner table and made him part of the royalty. Such a very powerful lesson that reminds us on how to handle special people in our midst. They should not be kept aside. They should be part and parcel. I thank God every time I see our church sign language interpreter ministering to the people who need his services and are members of this church. This is their church, for heaven's sake, just as it is our church. David made sure that every time Mephibosheth would eat on his dinner table. And as Mephibosheth crawled his way to the dinner table, David would always see his friend Jonathan in him and would take care of him. I thank God we also have special children in the Sunday school who are members of this church. This is their church. This is their church. The story of Mephibosheth reminds us of God's grace that he has been given to us through Jesus Christ. In fact, it's a story that tells grace that is written all over it. Though he had lost everything at the onset, he receives back everything. My friends, brothers, and sisters, God is not a respecter of persons. Acts chapter 10, verse 34 reminds us, he's not a respecter of persons. He treats us all equally. He doesn't look at our socioeconomic status. He doesn't look at the color of our skin. He doesn't look at our ethnic origins. He treats us all equally as children of God. Whatever happens in life, don't lose your position in Christ. Don't forget your identity. You are a child of God. Sometimes situations in life come that really eat into our self-esteem and can cause us to forget who we are. Think of this, a spouse walking out of your marriage, as it happens nowadays. If that happens to you, never forget who you are. You are a child of God. You are a child of the King. Please rise up, dust yourself, move on. Don't lose direction. Your relationship that was seemingly promising at one point, and you thought that it will lead to marriage and happy life thereafter. Things change and things go south as they happen nowadays. If that happens to you, never forget who you are in Christ. Rise up, dust yourself, move on. You are a child of the King. You lose your job, and now you have to do a quick adjustment. Everything in life, an adjustment of everything, from housing to even friends, as it happens nowadays. If that happens to you, never forget who you are. You are a child of the King. Please rise up, dust yourself, move on. Don't let it pull you back. Trusted friend betrays you, as it happens nowadays, and you ask twice or thrice is it you really who has betrayed me? My friend, is it you? If it happens to you, never forget who you are in Christ. You are a child of the King. Rise up, dust yourself, move on. Situations in life turned south for Mephibosheth. It took the hand of David to look at him and tell him, you are a child of the King. Don't fear. Friends, brothers, and sisters, whatever happens in life, don't forget your position in Christ. You are a child of the King. Please rise up, dust yourself, and move on in faith. Lesson number 3 and the final one for today is a life lesson. And this life lesson is genuine friendship that lasts a lifetime are based on honesty and authenticity with each other. Genuine friendship that lasts a lifetime. Genuine friendship that lasts a lifetime are based on honesty and authenticity with each other. One lady told me, do you think they are friends nowadays? Oh, what in Matapeli? No, they are friends nowadays. Genuine friends are based on honesty and authenticity with each other. Verse 7b says, for the sake of your father Jonathan. Remember, David is giving kindness, is showing kindness to Mephibosheth for the sake of his friend. And Jonathan at this point is long gone, but the friendship still continues even when the friend is gone. Real friendship thrives with honesty and authenticity at its helm. It directs ways to stronger and more meaningful relationship that lasts for eternity. David and Jonathan, their friendship of love went beyond grave. Even many years after Jonathan was gone, David would still see Mephibosheth and see Jonathan in him and made a vow to his friendship, kept it. Proverbs 17 verse 17 says, a friend loves at all times and a brother is born for adversity. Friends love at all times. I think every time David saw Mephibosheth crawl to the dinner table, he saw his friend Jonathan and would remember the vow that he made. The relationships that work because they are rooted and grounded on honesty and authenticity. But it is also important and imperative that we need to learn to choose our relationships carefully and be committed through the good times and the bad times. People often make jokes of, are you married or you are in a come we stay relationship? And then they say, come we stay relationship is come we stay until police separate us. Genuine friendship are rooted in honesty and authenticity with each other, even in a family situation. A good relationship that works is the one that is committed to be there for one another, even through thick and thin. A man who worked in government some years back narrated his experience after he lost the job. And for the first time, he said for a whole day, there was no phone call. His phone never rang. And he thought his mobile phone was dead. He took it to the fundi to have it tested. But the phone was okay. And he was wondering, what has happened? You mean nobody calls me? Kumbe the friends were holding on to the job only. When things went south, the friends went with that. Jonathan put his life in danger for his friend and would not stop from confronting the issue even with his dad. Genuine friendship is rooted in authenticity. They faced the truth together when things were challenging. And you remember when Jonathan noticed that David, his life was in danger, he would tell David that my dad will kill you. Let me tell it to you, to your face. If my dad finds you, you are dead meat. So always make sure that you keep that safe distance. Their friendship was rooted in honesty. And even it hurts at sometimes that they would face that reality that the life of his friend was in danger, but they found strength in each other. It was a commitment that endured the trials and the tribulations of living in a society that was not fair at all. David's love for Jonathan is even seen in 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 26. When Jonathan dies, the way David laments his brother and friend is way beyond expression. Listen to what he says. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You are very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of a woman. Very powerful words. You know, a guy on social media would say, Ngori, Juya Ngori, you know? Very powerful words. David loved Jonathan so much that when he is dead, he mourns, and you can see the way he mourns even through these words. Dedication and commitment to our friendship means being willing to go out of your way to keep the friendship afresh and alive. Friendship that is committed will always persevere through challenging times. David kept his word to his friend Jonathan, even when things were difficult. 2 times David had an opportunity to kill Saul, but he never did it because of his friend Jonathan. He even did not want to get into battle with his cousin, the brother to Jonathan. He tried his best to stop it, but he couldn't because of friendship. Relationships that work because 2 individuals are committed to that relationship. And it always lasts when God is at the center of that relationship. Remember in 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 42, Jonathan says to David, go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord is witness between you and me, and between our descendants and your descendants forever. Let us learn to cultivate relationships, friendships that last forever. Jonathan and David remained committed to one another in spite of family members not being on their side. They still remained committed to their friendship. In spite of years of being on the run, they remained committed to one another. In spite of war, they remained committed to one another. In spite of death, they remained committed to one another. The truth is they protected each other and guarded their secrets at all times. They guarded their families in spite of all the baggage that was there. We have seen friends, upon passing of one of them, instead of standing with a friend and the family, instead of standing with the family, he goes for his friend's wife and makes him a wife. Bad manners, it should not happen to us. We have seen friends, upon passing of one of them, forgets even their children, do not even remember who the children were. This is bad manners. It should not happen to us. We have seen friends, upon passing on of one, joins the other camp that were out to destroy this family, to disinherit them. And he was a friend. Bad manners, it should not happen to any of us. We've seen friends, upon passing on of one, and they were in a business partnership, takes over all the business and says, actually, this was all mine. Yeah, tu anakuja hapa tunapiga tu story, but the business is mine. Bad manners, it should not happen to any of us. genuine friendship that lasts a lifetime are based on honesty and authenticity with each other. 3 lessons to take home today. Lesson number 1 on kindness. Always remember the kindness of a friend. Lesson number 2 is a spiritual lesson. Whatever happens in life, whatever happens, don't forget your position in Christ. You are a child of the King. Don't forget that. Lesson number 3 is a life lesson. Genuine friendships that last a lifetime are based on honesty and authenticity with each other. May the Lord bless us and be gracious to us as we think about these words. May His light continually shine upon us and reminds us to always remember kindness of a friend, to always remember whatever happens, our position in Christ, and to always know that genuine friendship that lasts a lifetime are based on honesty and authenticity with each other.